Greetings everyone. Today we're going to explore solving system word problems. So all of this work we've been doing using systems of equations, how does it apply to the real world? First, let's go over steps for solving these types of problems. Now, these aren't steps you always need to follow. This is just a guideline if you're someone who struggles with putting context into an equation. So the first thing I recommend is to identify the variables, meaning what are the unknowns? What are we trying to find? So with where we are at in systems of equations, that's typically going to look like an x and a y variable. In further math classes, you can go beyond those two variables and find three variable application problems. The second step I recommend is to then take those variables and the values presented to you and write a system of equations. Okay, so to write a system of equations, typically you'll write them in standard form. So it'll look like an x value with a number in front, a y value with a number up front that creates a total value. Okay, and you might have two of those. So then maybe you have a second x value and a second y value, and then you'll have another total. Okay, now they don't have to be written in that order. We're going to stick to the basics, and we're typically going to use that order. Step 3, once you have that system written, you're going to solve it. And here's the nice part, you can solve using any method you prefer. So substitution, elimination, or graphing. Typically the numbers are going to be pretty obscure or large, and so graphing is not going to be the ideal. So typically we'll have substitution or elimination. Step 4 is to label your answer. In the end, those unknown variables are going to represent something. So for example, are we talking money? Or are we talking the amount of donuts? Are we talking about the amount of gallons of gas? Whatever it is, we need a label on each of the variables. Let's take a look at the first example. You should have a notes handout to make this a little bit easier. The first couple, I'm going to give us a little setup to help us get going. My intention is that you don't always need this setup in the future, that you can just figure out your equations without this big table and all these steps. But this is just going to help us get started. To start off, Tyler spent $131 on shirts. Fancy shirts were $28 each, and plain shirts were $15 each. He bought a total of 7 shirts. How many of each type did he buy? The first thing we want to identify is our unknowns, our variables. So I'm going to stick to the x and the y variable. And we want to decide what will each variable represent. Here's where you have to look at the question. How many of each type? Each type tells me I'm going to have a fancy shirt type and I'm going to have a plain shirt type. Those are the two unknowns. I don't know how many fancy shirts and I don't know how many plain shirts. Because I don't know, those are my variables. We then need to set up 2 equations. So in this table, to help me figure out my equations, I'm going to make this first column fancy shirts, and I'm going to make this column plain shirts. Okay. Then we got to talk about totals. I should have 2 totals somewhere provided to me. Well, I have a total of 7 shirts, so there's 1 total. And I have a total of $131 spent. $131 spent. So if I break that down, if I was to label what each equation is going to be, I'm going to have a money equation because I have a money total, and I'm going to have a number of shirts equation because I have a shirts total. Okay. Now I need to fill in the rest of the equation. So this is going to be equals here, equals the total. I don't know how many fancy shirts he bought, and I don't know how many plain shirts he bought. But I do know if we put them together, he got 7 shirts. So that's my first equation, just x plus y, 2 unknowns added together, gives me a total of 7. Here's where we have to be careful though. The second equation is equal to $131. So that means I need money in my equation. Well, fancy shirts, I don't know how many, were $28 each. So I have to multiply how many shirts by the cost. But also, I need to multiply the amount of plain shirts by the cost. So I have a row that's all about the number of shirts that add up to 7, and I have a money equation that every piece has money involved. If I write this out a little bit clearer, let's tidy this up. My two equations are x plus y equals 7 and 28x plus 15y equals 131. That's the only new part, you guys. From here on out, you're just solving a system. So now you can choose substitution or elimination. So please pause this video and try to solve this problem, and then press play and check your answer. All right, so if you calculated correctly, you should have an answer of 2 and of 5. Now I'm not going to show the solving work here because if you chose substitution, that's going to look different than the next student who maybe tried elimination. From here, if you have questions, if you're unsure where you went wrong in your work, that's when we need to visit, okay? So let's see if this makes sense. 2 fancy shirts, and I need to label, and 5 plain shirts get me to a total of 7 shirts. So that makes sense. If I plug in 2 times 28 and 5 times 15, I also get my total of 131. So I can check my work and prove that I'm correct. Let's take a look at another example and we'll use the same setup. In this example, Cory has 24 more than twice as much money as Stan. Together, they have $150. How much money does each have? This is a unique equation, so here's why we're not going to always use the table, because it's not always helpful. All right, so let's break this apart first of all. The question, how much money does each have? So those are my unknowns. How much money does Cory have? And how much money does Stan have? Okay. So I've got a Cory money column. Oops, Cory money. And I have a Stan money column. I have a clear total. Together they have $150. So there is a total. Meaning if I add up Cory's money with Stan's money, I'll have a total of $150. That one's pretty clear, okay? Here's where we struggle though. This next sentence does not fit in the table, okay? We're still going to use the variables, but now this isn't helpful, okay? So I'm going to do a little bit of work down here. Cory. Cory is represented by X. He has, which is like is, $24 more than. What operation represents more than? Plus sign, right? If you have $24 more than me, I would take my amount of money and add 24. But it's 24 more than twice as much money as Stan. If I take Stan's total, which is unknown, and I double it. Okay, let me read through this again. Cory X has equals 24 more than plus 24 twice the amount of money as Stan. Twice means 2 times. Stan is our y value. So now you can see that that equation doesn't fit in the table. It looks different. So x equals 2y plus 24 is my second equation. My first equation, I'm going to bring that down, was x plus y equals 150. So that's why you'll notice the rest of the examples and the work we're going to do don't have that table. And you don't need to use it ever. It's just an option to kind of start to organize your thoughts. So please, at this moment, pause the video and solve the equations. This should take you time. All right, so let's take a look. My totals with their labels should be the following. X, or Cory's amount of money, should be $108. That'd be Cory. Make sure you label that. And then Stan's amount of money should be $42. If I add those together, I get 150. So that's true. Here's how I can check the second equation. If I double 42, that would get me to 84. And if I add on 24 more dollars, I end up at 108, which is what Cory has. So my equations make sense, my amounts make sense. So let's move away from the table and let's create systems of equations on our own. Number 3, Phil has 50 nickels and dimes worth $4.15. How many dimes and nickels does he have? Okay, so first of all, I want to identify my unknowns. So I'm looking for how many dimes and nickels does he have? So X, I'm going to make dimes. Y is going to be nickels. If you flip those around, not a big deal. Just make sure it matches or follows along the same way. Now I need 2 equations. So I need 2 totals. So my totals, if I take a look, he has 50 coins. That's a total. And he has a total amount of $4.15. Those are 2 different totals. So my first equation, I'm going to have a total of 50. My second equation, I'm going to have a total of $4.15. Now coins, I don't know how many dimes and I don't know how many nickels, but I know if I put all the coins together, I have 50 coins. Now this next equation, so this is coins, this is money, which means I need money in every piece of my equation. Think of a dime. What is a dime's worth? If I take the number of dimes times 0.10, I'll know how much money I have. If I take the number of nickels times a nickel's worth, then I'll know how much money I have. So when you have money in a total, you need to have money in the rest of the equation. Here's the point where I would like you to pause the video so you can calculate using elimination or substitution to solve this system of equations. All right, so check your work. You should have nice clean numbers because here's what's not going to happen. I can't have part of a nickel or part of a dime. So I know I should end up with nice clean answers. So my dimes value, I end up with 33 dimes. Labels are important. And I end up with 17 nickels. So let's check. If I add 33 and 17, I have a total of 50 coins, so that's good. If I plug this into my second equation, well, 33 dimes times 0.1 would give me $3.30. 17 nickels at a value of 0.5 would get me to, let's calculate that out, 0.05, and then when times it by 17, that gets me to 85 cents. If I add that together, do I get 415? I sure do. So that again makes me feel confident in my answer. All right, last equation or system, excuse me. A movie theater charges $5 for adults and $2 for a kid's ticket. On Saturday, the theater sold 785 tickets for a total of $3,280. We want to find out how many child's tickets and how many adult tickets were sold for the movie that Saturday. So first thing I need to do is identify my unknowns. What am I trying to find? Well, look at the question. How many child's and adults tickets? So I need to assign child's tickets and adults tickets. Next, I need to create two equations. So I'm going to start off by finding two totals. Out of those, the information provided, I have a total amount, so that's my total money, and I have my total tickets sold. So my two totals are going to be 3,280 and 785. So this is going to be my tickets equation. This is going to be my money equation. Remember, if I have a money equation, I need to have money in the rest of my equation. A child's ticket is $2, so $2 per child's ticket and $5 per adult ticket. How many tickets were sold? I don't know. They sold so many kids' tickets and they sold so many adult tickets. Add those tickets together, I get a total of 785 tickets. So another thing we're looking at here that you need to consider is you need a calculator. If you do not have a calculator yet, you need to get one. This is going to be very challenging without. It can be done, but it will be more challenging. At this point, please pause the video and please use substitution or elimination to solve. All right, let's take a look. We should end up with nice clean totals because I can't have half a ticket. So we end up with 215 children's tickets and we end up with a Y value of 570 adult tickets. Check our work. If I add those up, I end up with 785 tickets, so that's good. If I multiply 215 by 2 and I multiply 570 by 5, I have a total of $3,280. If I plug it back into the scenario, it makes sense as well. All right, so things to consider. First of all, make sure you follow those 4 steps, okay, when you're solving these. That way it kind of leads you through and helps support you in this process. Next, make sure that your answers make sense. Okay? I can't have half a ticket. I can't have negative tickets. So I shouldn't end up with weird numbers like that. It should also make sense in the concept of the problem. If I'm selling movie theater tickets, like on the last example, and I get an answer of 2, not very realistic. If I get 10,000, also not realistic. So make sure it makes sense with the scenario. I'm not going to give you something that's obscure and doesn't make sense. Next, make sure you check Google classroom for your assignment. And then if you have any questions, make sure you visit with me, send me an email, try to catch me. And until next time, have a good one.